Hello and welcome to the A's Philosophy YouTube channel. I am A, and tonight or today at this time, I wanted to do an analysis of some claims that have been being made in the scientific community coming from about a month ago now. So this stream is being conducted basically August 2nd, August 3rd my time local. And about a month ago, around the beginning of July, all these different newspaper publications and popularizers of scientific information and such, they started publishing headlines like the one you're reading right here. Meet spud cell, the first synthetic cell built from non-living parts. So about a month ago, at the very beginning of July, a team of scientists from a university in Minnesota, I think it was the University of Minnesota, released information and basically making the claim that, for the first time, they had basically created a cell from scratch. And that would be really significant because as someone who studied this area for a while, I know that scientists have been struggling having immense struggles doing that up till now. They haven't really even come close. So this would be a tremendous breakthrough. So I wanted to do an analysis of this. I wasn't able to do it at the time due to basically my own personal schedule and things going on. But it's still relevant. I still see people out there kind of parroting these things. I debated whether to release this as a video or do it as a live stream. I'm going to do it as a live stream, but I might also release a video with the same information just to have it in multiple formats for people who want this information. So if you don't want to sit through the entire live stream, then you can watch. Maybe I'll post a video at some point in the future, but that is maybe. So, but I'm definitely doing a live stream right now. Right, but I wanted to analyze this because this is another one of those things that these so-called news scientific art publishers put out there, and it just gets thrown out there, and so many people absorb this. And when you actually look at the details of what happens, by the way, since this is kind of more of an analysis, there will be minimal audience interaction with the chat. I apologize for that, but I just want to make sure I get the analysis as quickly as possible. Um, yeah. So they started putting out articles like this one. Like this one is from thescientist.com. It says meet spud cell, the first synthetic cell built from non-living parts. Okay, so if scientists actually achieve this would be one of the most monumental advances in scientific history. It says spud cell marks a milestone for synthetic biology, but is not fully alive. It will, however, help scientists answer key biology questions. So this headline right here is, in fact, well, we're going to analyze it. We're going to see, is this actually something that happened? Just some more headlines out here. The New York Times, a pretty popular one. Scientists made a cell with most of the hallmarks alike. Here's what to know. Okay, it's got a paywall there, but you can still see the headline. Scientists made a cell. So, if you do a search online, you're going to see tons of articles like this with headlines like this. And unfortunately, I think what we're going to see is that these articles are absolutely rank propaganda. They are designed to confuse people and make people think things that aren't true. There's really no other way to look at it. Because when you start analyzing the details of what actually happened, when you see that claims like this are beyond sensationalizing. They they border on just actual lies and falsehood. Yeah, so these kind of pop science websites like thescientist.com, they do this all the time. They make these grandiose claims that do seem to deceive a lot of people. But again, when we're going to do the analysis, when you start looking into what they're actually claiming, the facts just don't support anything that they're writing. Here's a CNN article. And what's interesting about this is that all these articles were published on July 1st. Like you see here, the CNN article is published on July 1st, um, which is actually the same day that these scientists announced their supposed cell and made information public. So it makes you wonder how all of these different news publications could have these articles written so quickly, all of them, proclaiming this information, promoting this idea, this assertion, this information about from the science. How do they all have their articles just ready to go if there wasn't some sort of like coordination going on? I just don't understand it. But yeah, July 1st, that was the same day as the team released their data to the public. And all of a sudden, CNN and New York Times and all these different publications just have these fully written articles ready to go, ready for the public to consume. So it just kind of shows you how the media operate when they want to promote something and try to get something into the public consciousness. Anyways, we're going to do some analysis. So this is from Science Alert. Well, actually, we're going to analyze a couple of these websites. Let's start with this, sciencealert.com. For the first time, scientists say they built a synthetic cell from scratch. So have they actually done that? I'm not going to read everything, certainly, because there's just not enough time and that would be boring. But we can, we can try to get some details about how, whether this is actually going to hold up. Scientists from the University of Minnesota say they've created the first ever synthetic cell built entirely from scratch and seen it go through an entire life cycle, including reproduction. This is the most fascinating, important thing I've ever done in my work, and the realization that it's actually happening was rather slow to sink in. Synthetic biologist Kate Adamala, a co-lead on the project called Science Alert. We've replicated in chemistry what used to only be possible in biology, the complete set of behaviors of a cell. It proves that the most fundamental functions of life, like growth and replication, do not need a mysterious magical spark. Here's the problem. This is the woman who's at the basically the leader of this team of scientists, and her claims about being able doing all these things, when you scrutinize them, I don't want to call someone dishonest, but it does seem like she is actually engaging in active deception. So let's read here a little bit. We'll start right here. According to Science Magazine, we're actually going to read a little bit of this. Spud Cell has met some hurdles in publication. Apparently, one reviewer at Cell, a prestigious science journal, said the project was not real biology. So we can see that this really important advancement in biology was not even published by Cell because they rejected it as not even being, real biology. So already we're kind of seeing, like, why would they do that? Maybe, what do they know? That might be partially because Spud Cell doesn't meet the requirements for real life. It can't replicate itself over many generations, and so it can't evolve. Well, whether it can evolve or not is irrelevant. The thing is, it can't replicate itself, which is something that cells can do. I think biologists might not appreciate the significance of the chemical engineering simplicity of minimal cell. Spud Cell doesn't look like much if you're grading on a scale of natural biological systems. It's a very slow growth and replication cycle and high demand metabolism. So they're admitting that their intelligently created cell doesn't match up with natural biological systems. Isn't that interesting? I just think that's really interesting that humans using all their intelligence can't even really come close to what quote unquote nature has produced. Each artificial spud cell consists of a liposome, a sphere of fats that mimics the outer membrane of a real cell, wrapped around 7 plasmids, small units of DNA often found in bacteria that are a bit different from the chromosomes you might be familiar with. Okay, so they are constructing a membrane of a liposome. Okay, so that that might be something that exists in nature. But what are we already seeing here? They're wrapping it in plasmids, or units of DNA. Okay, so where's the DNA coming from? Well, it's being supplied by the scientists. Okay, and they're creating it with intelligence. So, are they really building the cell from scratch? Or I think they're actually extracting it from bacteria. The cell is also equipped with an inbuilt protein expression system, which translates the DNA's genetic instructions into action. So it's equipped with an inbuilt protein expression system. Where did that come from? Did is that something that just exists in nature? No, it isn't. Um, this is something again that the scientists had to take from previously living organisms. Protein expression systems aren't just floating around in the environment. So, are these scientists really making this cell from scratch? Is the question. That's what allows the cell to turn the nutrients it absorbs from the surrounding liquid into useful material and enables cell division. So, they equip it with a protein expression system which translate the DNA genetic instructions into action. That's what allows the cell. So, the scientists are basically preloading this basic cell with the necessary components to do what it needs to do, which is hardly building a cell from scratch. According to research, the spud cell is capable of selection, genome replication, growth, resource acquisition via feeding, and genetically encoded division. So this section is, why do scientists want to make artificial cells from scratch? I don't really care about that, to be honest. Currently, spud cells don't last more than a few generations. They can't actually produce their own protein expression system. Oh, isn't that amazing? So it's a cell that is being built from scratch, supposedly. They're being equipped with they're being pre-equipped with a protein expression system that can't be reproduced within the cell itself. So they're being given everything they need from the scientists, nor can they regulate their metabolism. So they rely entirely on the substances and components floating in the liquid medium in which they float. So again, these substances and components in the liquid medium are being provided by the scientists too. Good to see you, Harlan Bros. I'm doing analysis. So when I'm doing analysis, I usually don't interact with the audience, but it's good to see you. They rely entirely on substances and components in the liquid medium in which they float. Okay, so where do those come from? This, again, we have the scientists preloading the experiment with everything the cell needs, putting it in the liquid medium so that it's there with the cell. The blobs also lack a cytoskeleton, the internal scaffolding that props up natural cells. This simplifies things, but also means they can't shuttle or materials around or clear waste. So look at all these really important components that this cell doesn't have, it can't actually do, that would be necessary for it to be an actual cell. So listen to these headlines. Look at these, like, let's go back to these headlines. TheScientist.com, this grandiose, the first synthetic cell built from non-living parts. New York Times, very popular, one of the probably most popular print publications in the country. Scientists made a cell with most of the hallmarks of life. But when you actually do an analysis, it lacks everything, doesn't do anything. The scientists are putting pre-created elements from living organisms into a basically a fatty membrane in a liquid medium, which contains everything the cell needs, including the genetic material itself. And then they're saying they created a cell, and the cell can't even do these basic functions. It can't reproduce its own expression system. It can't regulate its own metabolism. It can't do anything that cells need to do. So I've seen people basically, I don't want to say name specific people, but they're people who you might expect who want to promote naturalistic theories of the origin of life, promoting this spud cell as some sort of grandiose breakthrough. But when you start analyzing the details, this is incredibly weak. I think if this is the best the naturalist can come up with, then it really does show how pathetic naturalism is when it comes to providing an explanation for this very important element of basically what it means to be alive. which is the beginning of life. You can't get life without life beginning. And even with all of our intelligence as scientists, we still can't even create the most basic element of life, which is a single cell. Science.com or science.org, Science Magazine, whatever you want to call it. Lab created spud cell marks stunning step towards building life from scratch. A synthetic cell can now grow and divide, but it's far from alive. Again, written on July 1st, the same day that the team made their work public. I just keep asking myself, how do all these different publications have these well-written articles the same day as the information was released to the public? It's very suspicious, very suspicious. It's just a microscopic water droplet surrounded by a fatty membrane and stuffed with chemicals and snippets of DNA encoding a mere 36 genes, but it's arguably the closest researchers have come to building a living cell from scratch. Well, as we've already seen, it's very far from building a living cell from scratch, very far. And work posted online today, University of Minnesota Twin Cities synthetic biologist Kate Adamala and her team show their creation. How do these people have these articles written the same day that this information is supposed to be made public? Just that's not really part of this analysis, but it is an interesting question. This is a stunning achievement. But researchers note that spud cell remains far from living cells that can't divide over many generations or evolve. Some have also grumbled about Adamala's efforts to draw attention to the work, which he said was rejected by Cell after one reviewer said spud cells was not real biology. We already saw that. Researchers have long dreamed of creating cells in a lab. Isn't that amazing? If you listen to some of these skeptics out there, naturalists, you would think we've basically just created an entire functioning, complex living organism like a reptile or a fish in the lab. No, we haven't even come close to making a single cell yet. People need to understand how far we are from understanding life. Our most brilliant scientists can't. It's not that just they can't mix chemicals together and make a cell. It's that they can't even figure out how to make a cell just trying to put it together with the parts there. To both understand life's fundamentals and produce cells that can be better engineered to make certain compounds. But most have set their sights lower and tried to replicate individual cell functions such as feeding and growth. But they're not even trying to make complete cells at this point. They're trying to make just parts of the cell that do things that aspect of life with all of our intelligence, because each tends to work best in a different set of conditions. For instance, a certain amount of magnesium or a specific level of acidity. But scientists want to think a long time ago there was just this puddle of water, and it just all happened. Just all these, a bunch of chemicals got together at the same place in the same time, and just the cells started. Meanwhile, our scientists, using their intelligence, using their knowledge of biology and chemistry and the laws of nature, can't even basically do or create something that mimics processes within the cell. And they're saying that there are constraints to doing multiple functions at the same time because of these constraints. But how is nature supposed to solve all those problems? Like a little puddle of mud solve this really complex problem that we're having an incredibly difficult time solving with our intelligence. Being able to incorporate all these molecules together in a synthetic cell is the feat the field has been waiting for. Researchers seeking to build synthetic cells from the ground up have either used the existing molecules of life, DNA and fatty acids, for example, or developed synthetic building blocks. Spud cells take the former route, relying on the pure system developed decades ago. So they relied upon the system. So what they did is they, as we already discussed, used existing molecules in life. So again, these are not molecules that would exist without life already present. So they weren't there at the very beginning. So scientists are using molecules that are already present in life, can't figure out how to put together a cell. But these molecules wouldn't even have been there at the beginning for nature to use to make the first cell. I mean, the problems just go on and on for the naturalist theories. So spud cells take the former route, relying on the pure system developed decades ago, a kind of basic kit of the molecules, including proteins and ribosomes, needed to transcribe DNA into messenger RNA and translate RNA to proteins. So they're basically what they're doing is they're taking existing cells, extracting the key components and putting them in a contained area and calling it a synthetic cell. Other researchers have put these building blocks in the liposomes, essentially water droplets surrounded by fatty acids, to create systems with some cells, which again would not be happening in nature. Not without nature isn't going to be like, we need this genome to do all this important stuff. So no, it took an intelligent being to do this. So even if the scientists were successful to create a cell, all they're really doing is proving that intelligence was necessary to do it. Kind of like if someone were to build a spacecraft, and they would say, "Well, we built a spacecraft. That proves that nature could." No, it doesn't prove that nature could do it. It proves that you need intelligence to build a spacecraft that goes to the moon. Same thing with a cell. Oh, well, if we put together a cell and engineer it and encode it, that proves that nature should be able. No, it doesn't. It proves that you need an intelligence to do it. That's all you've proven. Another type of service tag called flag that can bind to a large molecule known as structividin. I think I pronounced that correctly. The binding generates repulsion among the service molecules. When enough structividin is added to the medium, the force can essentially break the droplets apart. So this is a very artificial means of accomplishing cell division. It's not the same process that the complicated, coordinated process that takes place in actual cells. It's basically an artificial mechanism to break open the cell or the protocell, spud cell, using basically molecular forces. Okay, and it's not being coordinated and separated through some sort of like designed efficient process. It's as dumb as it gets. Even a scientist herself admits it's as dumb as it gets. It's like hitting it with a hammer on a molecular level. The division process is very inefficient, Adam will admit. To get multiple rounds of division, the researchers had to mechanically split spud cells by pressing them through a membrane with tiny holes. So they can only get one round of division for a cell. To get multiple rounds of division, this is the thing they aren't admitting in these other articles. They're actually having to mechanically and in a coordinated fashion, in an intentional fashion, press the spud cells through membranes with tiny holes, which is, why would anyone claim that it accomplishes or progresses knowledge in any way? So this is how they get multiple rounds of division. They actually use means to mechanically split them. This is not in any way a natural process. Doing this several times revealed another issue. Because the replicated genomes don't neatly separate. Let's go back to this. And put it this way, back when life was first forming, you wouldn't have had, according to the naturalists, you wouldn't have had intelligent beings forcing the protocells through membranes to separate them. Okay, so you don't get that in the origin of life. You get that in a lab with humans doing it, but this is as far from naturalism as it gets. Doing this several times revealed another issue. Because the replicated genomes don't neatly separate during division, only 30% of spud cells carried the full genome after 5 divisions. So, yeah, again, they're pressing it through these membranes to separate it, to quote unquote undergo division. And we're seeing that the materials in the cell are not replicating properly as they do in real cells. This is just really problematic. Again, to think that it's problematic in the sense if you're trying to think of how this all would have happened naturalistically, when humans are guiding the process very carefully and everything's falling apart within 5 cycles. But they want to say that somehow the first cell on Earth was able to overcome all of these extremely difficult problems, chemical problems on a microscopic level that needed extreme precision and guidance from humans to overcome, and they still can't overcome some of the serious issues. The complex machinery that makes proteins, the ribosome, also degrades over time in a spud cell, and there's no way for the system to make new ribosomes or get rid of the old ones. Wow, well, you need ribosomes to make proteins, which are necessary for cell division. So they equip them with ribosomes. They take the ribosome from bacteria, put it in the spud cell, And there's no way for the spud cell to make new ones, so they just more food and grow faster. Indeed, the mutated spud cells outcome. So they mutated the genes that they put in here, and it did something different. So, and they're admitting in the quotes down in the article, but I don't think what it means. I don't think it means we're close to creating a fully synthetic cell. So they're even admitting they did not create a fully synthetic cell. So why is the scientist.com lying to people and saying with a headline like this? Even when the lead author of the lead scientist of that crew just admitted, uh, okay, so it's a different person. It is this person's opinion for sure, but you have a scientist nonetheless saying that this isn't a synthetic cell. But then you have these websites that certain segments of people who are interested in this, the skeptic community, read and use and post on their websites like Reddit and wherever else on YouTube on their YouTube channels, and they read from them. Wow, scientists created the first synthetic cell from non-living parts, and then they don't go into the details that show that this is all a bunch of nonsense. It's a bunch of gobbledygook. It's not true. What these scientists did is not remarkable at all. They basically took pre-existing living components, stuffed them into basically a fatty membrane, a very simple fatty membrane, and basically let it run for a generation or two, doing its thing that these chemicals do, these molecules, these biological molecules, and then they died out, just as you would expect, because they're not actually a living thing, and they're being taken from living things, working for a generation or two, being mechanically guided in some process by the scientists, and then it's over. These are not synthetic cells. They're not even close to synthetic cells. But again, the scientist.com, you can see the Redditors out there salivating over how the creationists are getting, how their worldview is slowly crumbling in front of their eyes. New York Times, scientists made a cell of most of the hardware. No, they didn't. New York Times is lying. This is a false, fake news headline from the New York Times, just like most of what they write. Now here's CNN, a slightly more accurate headline. Scientists say they have built a cell from scratch for the first time. Yes, except that's not even what they said, because we just saw a quote from a scientist that say this is not a synthetic cell. It's not a cell. Prairie Palette, I have live streams all the time. This is not one of those an open panel. You can join one of my open panels. I host them at least once per week. You can come in and talk to me then. Yeah, this is an analysis, and I'm just showing people that respond to these claims, showing that this happens a lot. I'm just doing this one analysis, but I see this happen all the time, where people in certain communities, online and elsewhere, will see these headlines. They will basically believe them, believe the hype. They will read a headline like "Meet Spud Cell, the first synthetic cell," and they will not analyze it. They will not critically investigate it whatsoever to find out that they're basically. I'm not sure if these people are engaging in deception, but it certainly seems like that when you understand the facts and how weak and pathetic this information is. And I've seen some YouTube channels promoting this as if this is what was actually accomplished, and some of them are big channels, and I see a lot of some of them have thousands of subscribers, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and I see the comments of wow, this is awesome. We finally created a cell from scratch. Oh, yeah. How about you, Prairie Palette? You're welcome. As I just said, you're welcome at one of my open panels, and we can talk about this. Go ahead. You're welcome on, just not right now. Come back, subscribe to my channel. You'll be well. We can have a discussion about this. And I have talked to DZ Debates, and he's not a scientist. He's a critical scholar of the Bible. So why would I talk to DZ Debates in the first place? Anyways, all right. So that's my analysis. I might do another video on this. I think that in total, when you actually look at what happens, the scientists did not create a synthetic cell, not even close. They, how do I call in? Yeah, subscribe to my channel, and when I have a live stream, click on the link, and you can join just like anyone else does. Just when it happens. So yeah, in final analysis, this is really important. This is important. Can do some of the things in this experiment, but to say that it rises to the level of creating a synthetic cell, no, it doesn't. I think when you actually understand what's going on, it actually disproves the idea that naturalism is a viable theory. It shows you how absolutely weak our understanding of how this could have possibly happened naturally without intelligent guidance. It shows that intelligent guidance was necessary. And it shows that because the reason we know that is because even using our intelligence scientifically in a lab, we still can't seem to do what is nature blindly operating is supposed to have done. But scientists can't even figure out how to replicate certain processes within the cell, much less make a cell that actually functions at any meaningful level. So yeah, I hope this was informative. I hope that some of it's kind of difficult and in the weeds, but if you go and look at it and understand it, I just people need to understand that scientists did not create a synthetic cell. Um, when you actually, if we're using the definition of what cells actually are, they did some interesting stuff, and it did some. They might have made some sort of breakthrough on the level of understanding some areas of biology. But for people who want to believe that they created a synthetic cell, they are very sorely mistaken. The facts do not support that. That's not a religious claim. That is a scientific claim. That's based on understanding what cells are and what the scientists did, and what the scientists did just simply does not bring us there. And if anything, it shows the weakness of naturalism. The fact that our scientists are struggling so much just to create the most basic aspect of living organisms, which is a single cell, even a cell at the most basic level. All right. Again, thank you so much. I hope this was helpful. I hope people are able to watch it, understand it, and I might release another video on this just to get more of this information out and help people understand it even better. So keep an eye out for that. Thank you, and until next time, God bless.